But what I'm doing here is using green popple. And I cut the pieces out with, I want the knots to show.
What's the advantage of green popple versus dry popple?
The only thing I see is it cuts easier when it's green, but then you have a drying process to wait and dry and wait and dry so it doesn't warp the bowl. So here's a couple that are finished. This is popple. And this one is popple. But see, you get the color when they're finished. This is turned green. Dries for a while, and I turn it again. I start when it's quite thick. What I mean by quite thick, put them up to this stage, then I let them dry, and then I turn a little bit more, dry some more, and finally I get them down to 1/4 inch, 3/16 an inch thick.
So when you say you let them dry, how long of a dry time is it between stages?
Oh, it could be 4 or 5 months, 6 months, 7 months.
And what's the diameter of the tree that you start with?
Well, when we do the bowl, this is the size of the tree.
Oh, I see the rings, yeah.
And I cut it apart with a chainsaw, and I get a half, and then I cut it out in the bandsaw, and I get a piece like this. I'll use the chuck, I'll chuck it in the turning lathe, and I'll end up with a piece like this. And from here, I'll turn and I'll get like this. And eventually it gets down to a piece like this one.
And you purposely find the ones with the knots in it?
Yes, I want the knots to show. See, then when you're done, the grain starts to show, and the knots will show up.
Where did you find these type of designs or inspiration from?
We go to Hoosfest, Minot, North Dakota, for Scandinavian festival, and they do have there a lot of the Scandinavian style bowls. This is a Scandinavian design.
Do these bowls have a name?
The bowl shape can be, no, it's just a
bowl.
Just a bowl.
But you said different types of designs.
Yeah, it's different shapes to it. So you can get different designs carved into it. This one is just a smooth surface. Or like this, so you can get shapes to it.
And you put the rings on them, just a different design.
Yeah, it's just in the turning.
And again, this is more popple. This is all popple.
This is popple and green. But if you look close, when it dries, how it distorts. Some people like that, some don't. It's a variety.
How do you prevent them from cracking?
Prevent it from cracking, it is, you see the center of the tree? Center of the tree is right here. When you're turning, you cut that out. So you do not have the center of the tree in the finished bowl. So if you look here at the pattern, the center of the tree is right here. If that center of the tree was in the bowl, that's where it would be cracking. So when you take away that center, it helps prevent cracking.
Is there any specific types of turning tools that work better than others? Or any, just have a good sharp wedge to turn? Do you have any?
There is bowl gouges, there is spindle gouges. You just don't want to mix the two on the type of turning you're doing. Bowl gouges are for doing the inside of the bowl, and you can do the outside. A spindle gouge It's normally just used for doing the spindle work on the outside, not on the inside.
Does any certain speeds work better? Fast speed turning or slow speed turning?
When you put a rough block like this in the chuck on the lathe, I run the RPM up just to when it starts to vibrate. Then I'll back off a little bit. As you turn and get it smoother and smoother, you can turn the RPM up faster. So it varies. The RPM can be 500 RPM to 1000 RPM, depends on the balance of the block.
And what would you say it would take for time to finish one of these bowls? How many hours do you have into one of these?
That varies too. It's a hobby, so we're not producing them for speed. I've gotten onto using the bowl gouge, so I can actually turn out a piece. Where's that? I can turn out a piece like this in just one turning. It'll cut fast, but it takes longer to sand it and put the finish on than actually doing the lathe work itself.
How can you tell if you're going to break through such it's a thin wall or not?
I use a light. If you look with the light inside, the light will be showing through the thinness of the wood, so you can tell by the glow how thin you're getting. And the more I turn, the more I find that I can hear it. There's different tones. When the gouge is shearing the wood, it creates a certain sound. I can tell then how thin I'm getting by that sound. This particular piece is going to be a southwest base. You can kind of see now the shape of it. But how I do that, I turn the outside two pieces, and this is still in the drying process. So when this dries down more, I can take more out in the inside and shape it more. And eventually I'll have this surface smooth, and I'll glue it back together. So it's one piece and it's all hollow inside. If you look real close, this is just part of from a knot inside of a tree.
And when you finish these, what do you finish them with?
There's many ways of finishing it. Some use salad oil, some use tung oil. This particular one is polyurethane. To bring out the graining, I'll first put on a coat of tung oil. Let that dry, sand it down, but that brings out the graining in the wood. When this particular bowl gets finished, there'll be real distinct knot right through here, and that'll really show up into a deep color.
Have you tried other woods or just the popple?
I have tried other woods.
This seems to work the best.
Not saying it's the best. It's the phase of my hobby that I'm into now is turning green wood. There's many different species of wood you can use.
Are you finding this wood locally?
I'm finding this right behind my shop. Trees that are dying and ready to harvest, I'll cut them down with a chainsaw.
Straight out here in northern Minnesota.
Yep.
All looks good.